Will be the next speaker after Warren Starnes is our first speaker this morning. It's Friday morning. Warren is a man who has been given 6 months to live. Had cancer, a triple whammy, bladder, prostate, and urethra. 6 months to live, and he got into this technology 4 years ago, and he's still with us. That alone is a powerful testimonial to what he's about to tell us. He's the director of Skilling Institute. He's been a director there for 14 years. Let's welcome Warren Starnes.
Appreciate it.
Welcome, everybody.
Are we on? These are the early birds. Congratulations on being able to get up and get out and show up early.
You know, you're probably curious about the flashing lights over here, and of course this is the culmination of over 51 years of research and development by Ed Skilling, who was for
17 years the senior electronics design engineer for General Dynamics when they were a big military developer. He designed all the schematics. He approved all schematics. I saw a memo in his file from General Dynamics in those days, and it dictated to all their electronics engineers, and they had over 1,000 of them. Because they were one of the biggest electronics developers, anyone getting out of electronics, they wanted a job at General Dynamics. So they were waiting in line with great resumes trying to get to work for General Dynamics, as they do these days. And the memo dictated that to all electronics engineers, over 1,000 of them, if Ed Skilling didn't sign off on the schematics, General Dynamics wouldn't build it. Ed Skilling oversaw all the engineers, all schematics, all designs, all electronics by General Dynamics. He had the highest security clearance of any human at General Dynamics, including top management. Not only did he design all these guidance systems and electronics and military spec secure kind of components, he designed all of their test equipment. No matter how bright an electronics engineer is, they usually have to go to Honeywell or some of these big companies with rooms full or buildings full of engineers to design test equipment. So that's how bright Ed Skilling was. He respected Tesla, as we all do, for the great work that he did, and Ed Skilling took it to the next level. But what happened in 1959, California cancer doctors commissioned Ed Skilling to reinvent original Rife technology. They bought one of only 3 original Rife instruments in the world, paid $30,000 for it. In 1959, that would be the equivalent of like $300,000 or $400,000 today. So it was a big deal. Well, they used it on some of their cancer patients, didn't notice any dramatic results, so they kind of had to push it to the side, but they were smart guys. They weren't willing to roll over on this investment, so they said, you know, this is the 1950s, this is the age of solid state, modern space age electronics, so they commissioned or tried to commission Ed Skilling. One of my first questions for Ed Skilling was, how in the world did they talk you into doing this? In the 1950s, the word alternative was not a good word. It really has some kind of question these days. They're always trying to regulate the alternatives, where in Europe and other countries where the government pays for health care, if something works, they embrace it and they just start using it. If something works in America, they want to quarantine it for 20 years and keep it quiet. And of course, the only people that benefit are the people that live there, and the only people that suffer are the people that live here, us. Well, Ed Skilling made a real quick retort to me. He said, Warren, you need to understand, all my sisters and brothers died of cancer in their 30s and 40s. So I was keenly interested in anything that might electronically have something to do with cancer. So he took this original Rife instrument, and looking at it with an expert electronic eye, he realized what they were trying to do, but in the 1920s and 30s, there was only radio. They were required to use electron tubes. You may have looked in an old radio. When we were kids, we'd look in radios and we'd see all these little rows of tubes, And boy, they'd just be, you see the little lights in them, they'd be humming, they'd be hot. And, you know, we always looked in everything. And later, in a few years, they came out with new radios, and we'd go to look inside them. We'd take the fiber board off the back, and then all of a sudden there was this big sheet of metal with a bunch of little holes in it. So now we're, with our little eyes, looking in these little bitty holes, looking at these tubes. We didn't realize that somewhere along the way they realized electron tubes put out a lot of watts. And they found out that watts are not friendly for the human body. So if people are going to be sitting in front of the radio, as we all did, for hours and hours and hours and hours, it might not be good for people. So they shielded it. Well, Ed Skilling told me real quick, he said, man, if you're closer than 6 feet for longer than 10 minutes to a life tube technology that emits 50 to 150 to 250 watts of power, if you're closer than 6 feet for longer than 10 minutes, it starts to destroy your white blood cells. I said, what? You know, your white blood cells are your generals in your army of defense in your immune system, and it's kind of like if you're at war with a pathogen or an infection, how many generals can you lose and still expect to win the war? Well, you don't want to lose one. So I learned a lot in the beginning with Ed Skilling, and during my first 4 years of working with Ed, 8, 10-hour days, and he's teaching me all these wild electronics and all these weird tricks that he's figured out. Every time he'd get a call, he'd put it on speakerphone. A call came in, I was working on the circuitry, I was just kind of listening in, and it was a doctor in California. And this doctor and he had this conversation, and in the middle of the conversation he said, you still got that big doodah, big box? She said, well, yes, I still have it. He said, well, how's it working for you? She said, well, I'm still batting 1,000. Now, I'd never heard 100%. I never heard batting anything, because everybody in the alternative field is real conservative and should be. So after the conversation, I said, you know, who is this? Well, as a doctor he's known for 20 years. And I said, well, what was this box you were talking about? He said, well, that was a special instrument I made for a rare form of cancer that one of her patients had. I said, well, what kind was it? He said, well, it was extremely rare, because this young lady in her early 20s had tumors over every square inch of her body. Top of her head, bottom of her feet, every square inch. Couldn't hardly wear clothes. Extremely painful. So he made this big electronic noble gas tube technology box. I said, well, what kind of gas was it? He said, well, I call it spirit gas. I said, well, now what do you call it? What was it? He said, well, it was krypton, xenon, neon, argon, all the noble gases in a special combination that he tested electronically to see what kind of electrons these tubes emitted. I said, you did what? He said, oh, and he showed me some of his test equipment, and it was all weird. And I said, all right, just tell me about the story. What happened to this girl? He said, well, 6 weeks after she started using this box, her boyfriend rigged it up to slide it up and down over her bed. She was out riding a bicycle. Well, the only thing I knew about cancer was it either comes back or goes somewhere else. So I said, okay, that's a great story, but what happened to the girl? He said, well, you know, a couple of years later, it started coming back, so she went back and got the instrument from the doctor, took it home, used it for a few weeks, went away, and never came back. I said, so this is the box you were talking about? He said, yeah, she's been using it for 20 years. That was 10, 11 years ago, so now 30 years. And she's never failed to change a case of cancer, and she uses it for Lyme, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia, all the chronic, big, difficult diseases. I said, well, where is it? He said, well, I only made one, and that's kind of the way Ed worked. He had more ways of making the same circuitry than anybody I've ever seen. I said, well, you know, we get people calling too late. We have people that, in 2008, we had 6 families call to order a Photon Genie, which is the portable model that led to this big model. And their relative died before the instrument arrived. Well, we have a 30-day money-back guarantee policy, so I fully expected these people would be calling. And so I don't hear from anybody. I get one call from one of them. We do the refund and apologize, and, you know, you should keep this in mind for the rest of the family. You're all in the same gene pool. So I called these other families. They said, no, we tried it and we're going to keep it. Smart. You know, one of the principles we all need to learn is the principle of learning from mistakes. Now, you know, everybody walked into this room today fully capable, and I didn't see one single person trip or fall. But I guarantee you, before you started walking your first time, there was a lot of tripping and falling going on. And you didn't feel bad about it. You didn't think anything about it. What'd you do? You just picked yourself up and tried it again. You cry a little bit, pain goes away, try it again. But we are all commissioned here with the power of choice to learn from mistakes. There's two kinds of mistakes you can learn from: your own and the mistakes of others. The latter is the preferred. It's amazing to me that someone would get any kind of sickness, diagnosis, disease, and not try to learn from the mistakes of all of those that have gone before them. Matter of fact, they're so convinced that they should just go do what the doctor says, you can't even talk to them about anything else. The word alternative has just barely come around and come of age these days. But after so many families, millions and millions of people watch their relatives die of slow, horrible, slobbering, screaming death, they're interested in something else that might work better or might not work as bad. Well, Ed Skilling's been designing these instruments for all these years. Here's this lady that's got one of these boxes. And I'm saying, hey, man, I'm a quick study. If it worked that well for an advanced cancer, why don't we make that again? He said, you could if you wanted to. I said, well, let me go ahead and start working on it. He told me how he did it, and all. It took us a long time, several years. In the process of making this technology, duplicating it again for practitioners that we have around the world, now in 41 countries, and for advanced serious conditions, we had a lot of emergency calls, and so it created this sense of urgency that we really developed this quicker. Because while the Photon Genie changed every condition, it improves the quality of life of any serious catastrophic illness, and it's noticeable. You can be too little too late. The Orientals have a saying, and they refer to pathogens in the body and the momentum they get as momentia. So that is momentum. If you and I were standing on the curb out here in front of the hotel and a VW Beetle started coasting down the drive, well, you and I could just say, hey, let's just go out there and slow this thing down, stop it. If it was an 18-wheeler, we just have to step back and say, we're going to have to let this one go. Well, pathogens, candida, fungus, mold, viruses, infections, cancer gets momentum in the body. Well, when does it get it? 10 years before you're ever going to find out. They now know that everybody has cancer. We're all born with precancerous cells in our body, and we live in an insulting chemical pesticide-full world. So what does it take to fire them up and get them going? You'll never know. How many of you feel pretty good today? See your hand. Anybody doesn't feel that good, go by the booth, hook a genie up to you, make you feel better. We all feel pretty good. The interesting thing is, if you went with me, and I took a little clipboard, put a little white smock on, you kind of tag along behind me, and we go to your local hospital here. And we go in, we get permission to interview people in the hospital, and we go room by room by room through this hospital. Now, I might ask a few questions, but we're there to ask one main question. How do you feel? Well, 100% of them, with very few exceptions, would say, oh, I feel pretty good today. Well, my next question would be, what are you doing in the hospital then? Wait a minute. You're either terminal, you're sick, you're in the hospital, and how could you feel? Well, I feel pretty good today, and I feel a little bit better than I have before. And I perceive this as a mentality that we all get of acceptance of really just not feeling good. And a lot of times we don't know how bad we feel until we find something that makes us feel better. We go so insensitive and don't really realize, and we think it has something to do with what we're thinking. It absolutely doesn't. And here's the primary cause of why feeling shouldn't matter. Every critical organ in our body, our brain, our heart, our kidney, liver, pancreas, the organs that make you or break you, the things that if something happens, a bug gets in them, a virus or fungus or cancer, you're going to die. And guess what? You're going to be the last one to know, because there's absolutely zero feeling in these organs. They don't give you anesthesia to cut on these organs. They cut to put the protective tissue around these organs. By the way, I had a guy come to he said, "No, Rand, you're wrong about that. I feel my heart." I said, "No, you don't, not unless you got it pounding against something in there that has feeling." There are no feeling in these critical organs. So just out of curiosity, if you're depending on your diagnosis of how you're doing by how you feel, how could that work? Anybody? How could that work? It can't. By the way, if there was any feeling in any of your critical organs, there wouldn't be any agony of defeat on ESPN. Guy comes crashing down the mountain, and we all say, "Whoa, look at this guy, he's going to die." Gets up, dusts himself off, chopper takes him back up, and he does it again. You would never jump or run but once if you had any feeling in any of your critical organs. So any time you catch yourself saying, "I feel pretty good, I must be doing pretty good," those dots don't connect. It's just like standing on one side of the Grand Canyon and say, "This dirt over here is just like that over there." Oops, except for this big canyon that doesn't connect. So we've got to divorce ourselves of these false diagnoses. Well, you do go to the doctor and he comes back, and we hear it all the time. I don't understand it. I just went for my regular checkup, and the doctor said my heart's good, my liver's good, my kidneys are good, brain's okay, but I got this little spot on my pancreas, and he says I've got 6 weeks to live. I feel good. How can that be? Well, because feeling doesn't have anything to do with it. We've got to figure out how to better diagnose ourselves, and earlier rather than later. It's been documented that the average human has cancer 7 or 8 times in their life, and they never know it. Why? Because you went to the right doctor? No, you didn't go at all. You don't ever want to go. And you should put it off as long as you can. It's not doing you much good to go anyway, because he's going to just give you your last rites. He's giving you your marching orders. You realize how many doctors commonly say you just need to go home and get your affairs in order? You know how easy it is for them to say? It's just like saying, "Hey, try this, and if it hasn't done work, we'll try something else." I was 12 years old, went to the doctor, and I had the flu real bad, and I felt real bad, and I was willing to do anything. He said, "Doc, please give me something to help make this go away." He writes me a prescription. He says, "Here, one, take this, and if that doesn't work for you, we'll give you something else." Well, I was 12. I was just thinking. I said, "Well, Doc, why don't you just go ahead and give me what you're going to give me next? There's a chance this might not work, and you got something else. Hey, give me what's next." Well, we don't do that. It makes sense. We should do that. We don't do it because guess what? What he wrote you the first time's going to hurt. Drugs, chemicals, insult the body. They actually insult your intelligence more, but we're not thinking about it. If we're learning by mistakes, the Orientals have a very succinct way of putting it. We must change our direction lest we wind up where we're headed. How simple can it be? Now, it's been said that having cancer or any chronic serious acute illness is like being lost in the jungle. I think they're being kind. Because in the jungle, you can see some berries. You can see some roots. You can see some water. You don't know if it's safe. You don't know which one to eat, which way to go. You know that some direction's out of here, and you get to pick. When you sheepishly walk into somebody that only has two things to do for you, and they both turn out to be things they're doing to you, a procedure or a prescription. That's all they're legally licensed to do in this country by law, is a procedure, surgery, a prescription, some kind of drug, or all kinds of drugs. Neither one worked well for cancer, because Tullio Simoncini wrote the book, Cancer is a Fungus. He proved it's a fungus, and fungus always goes to the cut. We were little boys running in the woods, and we'd see lightning strike a tree or a storm break a branch off, and it wasn't but a few weeks or months later, and there's fungus growing in that cut. It's weird-looking stuff. Well, we were curious little kids, and so we'd try to knock it out. We'd knock all of it out, come back a few weeks later, there it was again. Well, we weren't going to be dissuaded by this, so we'd get chemicals and put on it. Well, it looked like it hurt it or whatever, but a few weeks, few months later, it came back, it was a different color. We ran by trees for most of our young life until there was nothing but a dead tree on the ground and a pile of fungus still eating it. We poured gas on it. We poured oil on it. We burned it. Nearly started forest fires trying to kill a pile of fungus, and we never succeeded. Because it's a mutating colony of cells. So if you hit it with something that doesn't work, it mutates, it adapts, and it comes back, and it's resistant to whatever you did, and maybe a lot of other things. It's exactly what cancer does in the body. You need to understand what Ed Skilling taught me in the very beginning. He said, Warren, you know the only known cure for cancer is your own God-given immune system. All I did is figure out how to communicate with it and power it up. The magic of this technology is not a drug, a chemical, a treatment, a protocol. It is simply communicating with your immune system at the cellular level and powering it up. There's a list of benefits. We have these at the booth. Picture, list of benefits, Photon Genie. But the Photon Genius is the culmination of the development of this first box. Well, I got the first box working. About that time, and my sons are here today. I'm glad they can make the trip, but they will be able to tell you about their mother. My ex-wife, their mother, got squamous cell melanoma skin cancer. The kind people don't get over. They basically can only slice and dice and hose you down with some radiation, and that's about it. They say they're buying you some time. Well, she came to me with this proposal. She had this mole on her shoulder. They removed it and found that it was the fastest spreading kind. She already had spots in her lungs. I'm thinking, game over. I've been dealing with cancer a lot of years. Man, you get spots in your lungs, and it's the kind that spreads this fast. There's just not much you can do. Good news, there's not much you can do. If you leave it up to us to fix something, it ain't going to get fixed. You can't even get your door fixed. Your garage door, your back door. Hey, this is how serious this is. It's only your immune system that can fix it. Well, how much time have we spent preparing our immune system for these kind of battles? And it is like being lost in the jungle. You only got a certain amount of time. You can't be guessing about directions, and that's what everybody's doing. What do you need when you're in the jungle and you're lost? Well, survival gear. Well, you can get a cell phone signal and have them drop all the survival gear in there you want, and all they're going to do is find you with all that laying around you, dead. What you need when you're in the jungle is a guide. We've got practitioners, some of them here today, that are more qualified than any medical practice on the planet. Santa Fe Soul up here in Santa Fe, they have 25 doctors, 40 different kinds of protocol, and they all complement the strength, the power of the body from the inside out. How hard is this? You know, if you have a Maserati and you have a little engine trouble, you don't take it to the VW dealer. The higher level of technology, the more expert kind of help you need to find. By the way, if you're going to learn from the mistakes of others, you need to be talking not to the doctor, but the patient sitting in his waiting room. You need to talk to people that have been there, done that. And if everybody in the waiting room looks worse than you, you should leave. Were you going to join them on the wait? We made this original prototype box testing it. His first box had 14 feet of this noble gas he called spirit gas combination. This Photon Genius has 150 feet of it. Well, I took this prototype box which had 18 feet, combination, noble gases. We had just barely gotten this first prototype to work, so I get my ex-wife and I say, listen, what they had proposed to do is they were going to cut her shoulder off, then they were going to cut a chunk of her thigh off to fill it in, and then they were going to radiate her. I said, what kind of plan is that? You're not planning life, you're planning cripple. You could die from either one of these surgeries and get staph infection, which would not ever let you heal, which would make your immune system more compromised, and the only thing that's going to beat it would be hurt more everything you do. You can't go under anesthesia. You can't go under the knife. You can't force the body to heal from some major surgery without weakening your immune system. By the way, when you cut your finger, how long does it take to get red around it? Instant. Well, you have to have a meeting. You have to go get a doctor. You have to get permission. You have to have a script. No, it's immediate and it's automatic. Your immune system is immediate and automatic for every challenge you put on it. We don't know that what we're eating insults and inflames our blood. We're not eating right for our blood type. We don't even know what a blood type is. By the way, your doctor won't know either because he doesn't know what it means either. But it irritates and inflames your blood. It weakens your immune system. You can only get away with it for 30, 40, 50 years. And then you get a diagnosis. Okay, you got your diagnosis. Now what are you going to do? Go to the doctor? Too little, too late. Wrong direction. You ain't getting out of the jungle you're stuck in. So you have to find alternative doctors like Santa Fe Soul. You have to find alternative practitioners that have experience with what you're dealing with, not experience trying stuff on it. Turn it around. They have to have power tools, dynamic, powerful enough that power up the cells of the body from the inside out. My ex-wife, I convinced her to take this box. My boys rigged it up on a couple of cases in her bedroom, and one of my sons gave her his little creepy crawler he slides under his car on. So here she is 2 or 3 times a day, and every night before she goes to bed, you get on the creepy crawler. I said, now you got all this experience, can you change my oil? She didn't think it was very funny, but she started getting her sense of humor back. Well, I was with her one day when they called from the Tucson Cancer Center, one of the best in Arizona, and she started crying and screaming through the phone on the floor. I thought something happened to one of the boys or something, and I was like, wait, I calmed her down, but I said, wait, that was the cancer center in Tucson. I said, well, what's the problem? She said, they told me that every day I waited to do surgery and radiation would take a year off my life. That's how fast it was spreading. I said, well, that's how fast you should be working on turning this thing around, but you shouldn't be going to places that they don't fix these problems. She started doing this every day and sleeping with the Photon Genie at night. Started juicing, doing coffee enemas, doing the things that work for cancer. Historically, statistically, never fail to change it. People that die of cancer, I had a call from a guy in Canada, and he said, Warren, I just want to thank you for telling me about that Photon Genie. I said, well, how are you doing? The guy had a real bad case of lung cancer, and I said, you know, it's good to hear from you. And he said, listen, I just want to thank you, and I want to tell you to tell Ed Skilling bless him for the great work he's done to keep it up, and he saved my life, gave me some life back. I said, well, how are you doing? He said, well, you know, this nasty old cancer is still going to kill me anyway, but guess what? The doctors had me on morphine. My grandkids would come see me, my kids would come see me, and I was either knocked out on drugs or screaming in pain. Since I've been sleeping with the genie every night now, I'm reducing the pain. I'm off morphine. The technology powers up the immune system so it controls things enough and reduces pain enough, you can have some kind of life. He says, cancer's going to get me anyway one of these days, but I'm going to have months and months and months of times with my kids and my grandkids, and they're not going to see me slobbering, screaming, or just knocked out. That's what the technology does from the inside out. So I took this box, she used it. If every day she waited to do treatment would take a year off her life, she was in her 40s, so she had maybe, what, 60 days to live? Well, are we going to say they were wrong? They had the tests. That was in 2003. She was out of work, almost disabled, completely. Couldn't do anything. I mean, it was killing her. And my boys will tell you, she got a real estate license, she goes to Costa Rica, she does all these trips. Hey, just the skilling technology and the other things that we know work to power up the immune system. And it's your immune system that wins the war. All the prescriptions I got when I was a kid, and the doctor said, you need to take this for 10 days. I'd go home, my dad said, you better do exactly what the doctor says. Well, we were kids and we were busy and we were playing. We'd take these pills for 2 or 3 days to get to feeling better and forget about it. When I went to college, I had to empty out our medicine cabinet in our bathroom, and there was just drugs everywhere. I never threw them away, you weren't supposed to, so, and not a single one of them had ever all been taken. Well, you can take things to slow something down. You can hit it to, I tell people, look, if you got a tumor choking off your aorta, go get the sucker cut out and live to fight a good alternative day. It's a combination of these technologies we have that can save us, but you got to be smart. You can't be going the right direction and get somebody to talk you into going off in left field. And it happens all the time. One of the things that hurts a lot of sick patients, especially cancer patients, catastrophic, is lack of support of the family. And it's not just lack of support. It's just saying, honey, are you sure? You know? You find this good alternative. You find something that can change you. You find a clinic that turns people around. Give you an example. I had a buddy, a client of mine I had consulted for 15 years, owned 23 companies. I managed his legal and financial affairs. And he came down with prostate cancer. He was a diabetic, which makes it worse because the body's already compromised. He never found a doctor like these doctors who can help you turn that around. Reduce the insulin, get you off insulin. It's the immune system. It's getting rid of the infections and the insults that cause it. He came and met with me with his business partner and said, guys, you got to do this. They knew I'd saved my life doing it. Well, I got him a genie. He called me 3 weeks later and said, I've never felt better. He had a little infection starting on his foot, and as a diabetic, you can't do that, and it started clearing up, which the genie does. So I said, man, we got this genius coming out. You got to roll one down in your office, get you started on it, use the genie until it's developed. I got a call 3 months later that he had just died of his cancer. I couldn't hardly believe it. This guy was a great friend. So I had a meeting with his business partner because he wanted me to help him sort out the financial and legal matters. I said, what in the world happened? He said, well, it was Bessie. I said, what? Well, she told him that he should do what the doctor said. And he told her that he'd already found out how good all this works. He was feeling better. And she said, well, you can go ahead and do that if you want, but you have to think of the grandkids. You have to think of your kids. You need to go down there and start your chemo now. And it killed him in 3 months. You can't put the strongest drugs ever developed in history in the human body without hurting the crap out of it, without killing yourself. Everybody says it's the closest thing to dying that there is. Let me ask you something. How can you do things that make you weak and never be strong? How does that work? How can you go in with a diagnosis and come out weak, strong, begging for somebody to shoot you? That's what it does. What do you think that does to your immune system? Boy, it just sends it on nosedive into the toilet. It's like cruising on cruise control at an altitude of 30,000 feet and just pressing it down to the ground. You just send your body into a nosedive. Hey, there is a point of no return where you can't pull out. She used this box. We're still working on the prototype. And then 4.5 years ago, I got my diagnosis. They gave me 6 months to live. Well, we put the pedal to the metal to develop the technology more. I went to China, Russia, Europe, all these European countries. Every doctor that was supposed to be great at dealing with cancer. And I weeded them out as fast as I could. I learned more from the patients in the room. I had talked to doctors in 41 countries for 10 years before that, so I was making calls and I was dying. I had like a blowtorch up your butt. Having to pee every 5 minutes. I know where every restroom is within any driving distance, any place I go, in 5 minutes, anywhere in Phoenix. That's how bad this can mess your life up. Well, I'm using the little prototype box. When I get back from Tullio Simoncini's bicarb therapy, which didn't work for me, it does work for some. If you catch it early, if you get it parked just right, if the cancer cells that invaded the little arteries, the little veins going into my prostate, so bicarb couldn't even get in there. I got home and I took a prototype of this unit right here. I put it under my bathroom bench. I put my legs up there, put my butt up there against it, and I just cooked it. In 5 days, my symptoms reduced. Well, how hard was that to figure out? I found something that worked, that helped. I still had prostate cancer. You know, everybody tries to determine how well they're doing by what some doctor says on a scan or a test. Guess what? 1 billion cancer cells can occupy the space of a pinhead. And you're waiting until you get a picture to say whether you've got it or not? No, you're cooking it up right now. We all are. It's the way the human body works. 50% of men at 50 have prostatitis or cancer, 70% at 70, and 100% of men at 90. It's not your genes. It's not because you're dead. It's because your dad was a man and you're a man, not because you're in the same family. We all believe nothing's going to happen. I actually sat around with groups of adults when I was a kid, and I perceived something from their discussions. You know, you'd be sitting around with some adults and they were talking, and if the word cancer came up, some old boy would say, oh, let's just don't talk about it. I got the impression if you didn't talk about it, you might not get it. Oops. It has nothing to do with what we think. It's a cause and effect world in here. Out here and in here. The photon genius was developed from that history. And instead of just doing a little box to slide around, we've got 180 degrees, 205 degrees around your body, head to toe. The history of infrared's been documented for hundreds of years. It goes back to the sun. All medical doctors have endorsed infrared therapy for decades. It's good, effective, treats, changes, and cures over 1,800 diseases. And we got the list. We didn't make it. We're not making the claim. It's what infrared does to the human body. There's a very viable treatment for cancer called hypothermia. Right in the brochure, it refers to it. It's getting the body up to 104 to 106. Well, that sounds kind of scary. I've had 104, 105 degree fever, and I thought I was going to die. I mean, you're delirious. You get 104, you should be calling 911. Well, you're going in and asking the doctor to do that to you. Well, in Europe, what they do is they give you an IV of a synthetic bacteria so it can't multiply and take off, and they jack your fever up to 104, and they keep you there for at least 4 hours, and 24 hours is really a must if you really want a fever or temperature to get to the pathogen cancer. Well, all pathogens in the body, candida, fungus, mold, they all can't handle heat. One say, well, I'll just get in a whirlpool. No, your core temperature is protected by every fiber of your being. I walked in 106-degree water up to my waist and got to where I could do it up to an hour. But it didn't do anything to prostate cancer. It didn't the other way. Because your core temperature is protected by your immune system and every other system of the body to keep you from having too high a fever and getting brain damage, etc. Well, so I passed on that therapy. There was a doctor in Germany that made probes, and they'd insert in certain places and heat them up and burn the tissue. Well, now you got scar tissue, and you got some damage. And where does cancer go? To the scar, to the cut. You know what? It's kind of like going to a forest and finding a tree down here or a limb broken, fungus in the broken limb, and say, you know what? We want to protect the rest of our forest here. We want to protect the rest of our kingdom. You know what? I got an idea. To protect the rest of these trees from getting this fungus in the limb of this tree, let's just cut all the trees right around it. Guess what? Come back a few weeks later, and they're all going to head it in the cut. And we get fungus in our body and say, why don't you just cut it out? Well, it ain't going anywhere. It likes the cut. You really shouldn't be cutting on anybody that has, any human body that has cancer in it, because they like scars. You know, the objective is to win, not just play. You know, they didn't go to Iraq and Afghanistan to play. And by the way, the closest word to describe cancer in the body, or candida, or Epstein-Barr, any of these other fungus, mold, virus kind of things, is terrorist. I've got a book coming out at the end of the year. Right on the cover it says, cancer is not a disease you treat. It's not a disease. That's why treatments don't work. Cancer is not a disease you treat. It's an enemy you beat. Well, what do you need if you're going to have an enemy? You might, if you have a disease, you gotta go to the doctor and play the game. Let your immune system fix it without you knowing or the doctor admitting. But if you're fighting an opponent, you better have you some weapons. It's the only thing they're going to understand. They're showing up with weapons. They can't just multiplying and taking territory. They're eating you up. You're looking over the wall of your kingdom, and you see a little fire burning over here. You see a little smoke. Well, you don't go nuts and be stupid and send all your army out there. No, you send out a scouting party. We don't even scout to find a good doctor. You know, somebody at church told me about a doctor they use. I think I'll just go to him. What? What kind of investigation is that? What kind of due diligence is that? You'd never do it in the business. You'd never make an investment by talking to one guy or a tip from a friend. Hey, you know, I've also noticed that how many of you have pets? Puppies, kitties. Well, if Fluffy was laying down and couldn't get up, what would you do? Take him to the vet. Well, if the vet said Fluffy needs a surgery and it's going to cost $3,800, you wouldn't like it, but you wouldn't hesitate, because it's Fluffy. We can't let anything happen to Fluffy. But your husband, or your wife, or your daughter, or your parents, we need to do some more checking. This is going to cost $3,800. Oh man, what a mistake. We will do more and be more thoughtful and do more due diligence. And if the vet doesn't say that they're going to save Fluffy, and they know how to, and they've done it before, and you can't talk to somebody in there about they've saved their Fluffy or whatever, you say, Fluffy, come with me. We're going to find another doctor. and you go find a better vet. Why don't we do this for ourselves? You only have one life, and it's your body that's keeping it here. So, you know, by this experience, we also have noticed that the most well-meaning, caring people in your life are not necessarily a blessing to you when you have something that you can die from. A husband and wife were sitting in court, and this guy was with his wife supporting her because she'd been caught shoplifting. Tough times. She had stolen some food at a store. They caught her going out with this extra food. So she was in court, and the judge says, I see that you have stolen a can of peaches, and there's 8 peaches in this can, so I'm going to sentence you to 1 day in jail for each peach. Well, her husband raised his hand. He said, yes, you may speak. He said, well, Your Honor, she also took a can of peas. So you have to understand, they can love you, and they can be supportive of caring for you, but it's your destiny that you are in control of. You can't blame the doctor because you agreed to do it. You can't blame the drug. You agreed to take it. And you can't go out here playing this game of treatments for enemies. That's like saying, I know how to fix Afghanistan. Let's send some missionaries over there. We'll just convert them. They better be packing. Look, pathogens don't think, they don't care, they don't have meetings, they don't need a memo from somebody, and they don't need agreement. They just multiply and take territory, eat you up, 24/7. You know, I would like to talk to another, but I'm going to see how it works with this doctor first. How much time do you think you have? Shouldn't you be doing a lot of things at once? I mean, and a lot of doctors say, you know, you can do other things if you want, but I'd rather you not do anything else until you finish taking all of these pills or finish this treatment. We want to see how well this works. They're using you as a guinea pig, and you're risking your life. There was a study done in Europe with thousands of people. And they do better studies over there than we do here. Matter of fact, they're not much interested in it here. They took thousands of people, stage 4 cancer, and they divided them into 2 groups, and they got all of them to agree to do this. They had one group that that do everything medical, surgery, chemo, radiation, experimental drugs, everything, multiple surgeries, multiple treatments, multiple radiations. They let them do everything available in modern medicine. The other group, they got to agree to do absolutely nothing. No alternatives. Nothing. Just let the disease run its course. Well, guess which group lived the longest? Well, of course, the medical group did. By 3 days. What they didn't tell was the miserable, slobbering, horrible death these people did from all these surgeries, and the grief the family had to go through and endure from all of this. So the statistics support that it's your immune system that controls these things. Well, if it's an enemy you're fighting, and you need weapons on the field to do it, you have to find alternative practitioners that have these kind of weapons that are the grandest style power for the body, from the inside out. Hypothermia has never existed like this. You know, in a normal infrared sauna, you have maybe 2, 4, 6 emitters under the bench, and you can't control whether it's near or far infrared. They just kind of set it from the factory. And you're sitting in a wooden room, and guess what? The research proves that wood absorbs infrared. Well, sitting in a wooden room trying to get infrared is just like going to a buffet and getting behind all the heavyweights, all the football team, and think you're going to get something to eat. Infrared penetrates the body 2 to 4 inches. So while you get convection heat to the skin and your immune system, all the systems of the body protect your core temperature at 98.6 to 99, right a fraction under this skin, Infrared penetrates and it heats tissue up. It kills pathogens, candida, fungus, mold, virus, all affected by heat. Cancer, one of its biggest enemies, is heat. You just can't get the heat to it till the Photon Genius. You can stand in this thing. We got practitioners that treat, they don't diagnose or treat specifically because these cancer patients are under the care of medical doctors. They come to these clinics for alternative, extra power, make them feel better, quality of life issues. And so we have a number of documented cases by the medical doctors. We have a lady down in our area, Phoenix, that had 11 by 7 by 5 centimeter breast tumor. She'd been jacking with it for over a year under the care of a medical doctor. And she came and did 13 sessions in the Photon Genius. She goes back to her medical doctor. They do another ultrasound, and it reduced it 54%. Everything she'd done had not only not reduced it, it was constantly getting worse. We have videos on YouTube. We have videos upon request of doctors, medical doctors, alternative doctors, holistic doctors, chiropractors, colon therapists that use the Photon Genius in complement to their other protocols, and it's just staggering. We have one practitioner in Arkansas had a patient come and brought a relative with her. And she didn't tell him, but the relative that she brought, she went and picked up at hospice, brought him in a wheelchair. The doctor didn't know. She says, I want to buy a Genius treatment, a Genius session for him too. Well, they got him in the wheelchair because you can sit or stand in this thing. Well, they brought him every day for 2 weeks. He was in hospice. That's your checkout point. That's adios. After 2 weeks of doing the Genius twice a day, he went back to work. Now he still had cancer, but he also had control of something that he could do to change it. One of the worst things about dealing with this is sheepishly walking in and sitting in a lobby somewhere with a bunch of other sheep, and you see the edge of the cliff, and you just kind of marching right, you know, and there ain't nobody going to break away. Nobody's going to stand up and say, you think we should all be here? How you guys doing? Have you been improving very much? Maybe we should find some place in town. Keep coming to our doctor here, but maybe we should find some other place that makes people feel better, makes your immune system stronger, gives you a little more control over what's going on in your body, including hurting this enemy. Well, look, if you're going to fight an enemy, you better have weapons and you better have the best ones going. And don't bet everything on one weapon. I'll guarantee you, if you go to the soldiers in Iraq and try to talk them into taking their handgun off their hip, you're wasting your time. Well, they don't hardly ever use it. But they ain't getting rid of it because it's a way to save their life. You need to go to these clinics and find out all these multiple protocols that make this part of your body go, clean your liver up, strengthen your kidneys, power up your adrenals, keep your mind clear. My gosh, how many things can you do? How many? That's the question you need to answer. One of the questions that we notice that people ask a lot of times, well, how long do I have to do it? Well, how much time you got? Well, when can I quit? When you want to quit. Well, how many times do I need to do it? Well, how much better do you want to feel? This is one of the few things that the more you do it, the better you're going to get. Hey, I'm 66 years old. I'm in better shape than most 20-some-odd-year-old athletes in this damn town. It's real simple. This changes you. 30 minutes in this thing burns 500 to 700 calories. It's the equivalent of 4 hours of hard working out in a gym. Standing or sitting for 30 minutes. How hard is this? You should be saying, how many more of those can I do? How can I get one? When we started this, we thought that about 80% of these would go to clinics and practitioners. And we get a lot of them. We've got them in 13 states now, spreading like crazy. But 80% of these have been bought by individuals, and they have them in a bedroom or a room of their house. And why not? You can change every member of your family. You have total control over your condition. And by the way, it's your condition that changes cancer. It's your condition that gets rid of things. It's how good a condition you're in. You say, well, I'm in pretty good shape. No, you're not. Take your shirt off and stand in front of the mirror and try to prove it. What determines your condition is the result of conditioning. You can't get in shape by dreaming and just ordering another plate of something. You have to work out. Well, just moving the muscles doesn't burn up all the fat. Ladies, you know it. Guys, we all know it. This is the #1 power tool ever developed to get rid of cellulite. There's nothing else that'll work. This is a plastic surgery machine. Every woman that's done this for a period of weeks, they get rid of wrinkles. Their skin gets tighter. Isn't that better than a pair of scissors? Hey, it's real simple. There is a better way. You must change your direction lest you wind up you're headed. If you get far enough off course, you need major correction like this. The noble gas tube technology is like an electron bath for the body. There's two dynamic parts of the body, the plasma energy field, which dominates and controls your body, and the physiology, the chemistry, which we can adjust and change. Even changing your diet can change your body, and you can see it and you notice. Nothing changes it more than the plasma energy field of the body. Quantum physicists have proved, beginning in the 1970s, that if you bring any little harmonic, coherent energy to the plasma energy field in our body, you unleash unlimited healing potential of the organism. Well, if all these things we can do with diet and all these things, the chemistry stuff we put in our mouth and put on our skin can make a difference and we can see it, there's how you change it from the inside out in grander style than all of the diets and everything else you can do. I've got guys that work out 6 hours a day, 5 or 6 days a week, and they still got a little oil here. They just, well, it's not the fat that moving the muscle can get rid of. You have to burn it off. You have to power it off. The interesting thing and the side benefit of using this technology is now you've got all this electron bath opening up the receptor sites of every cell of your body. Now you're penetrating with infrared, targeted energy infrared, the first in history, every tissue in every cell of your body. If it goes 2.5 to 4 inches into your body, well, 2.5, 4 inches here, and then 2.5 turn around and do it in the back, you're almost getting it all. The question is, can you stand there long enough for the heat to penetrate deep enough to be hot enough to kill these punks? Yes, you can. You just have to wipe the skin to keep it cool, keep the nerves cool. When it gets too hot, you just touch your skin wherever you feel it, and you just stand right there and cook it. Ladies with breast cancer can stand in the center of this thing and it inflames it. For the first time, it empowers the woman or the man who has it to see where it is. They say, you got a X number centimeter tumor. Well, you know what centimeters are. And you don't want to think about how bad and big it is anyway, but it sounds pretty big and pretty bad. But for the first time, you can actually see where it is because it gets inflamed and red. Cancer hates heat. Well, dadgummit, if you found out an enemy didn't like something, why wouldn't you just order more of that? Serve it up to them. By the way, another one of the biggest enemies of cancer is oxygen. You don't like it. The reason you can't get enough oxygen to pathogens in the body is because your blood can't hold oxygen. If you're low in minerals and your pH is low, and all you got to do is pee on paper morning and evening and measure it for 30, 60 days, see what your cycles of acidity is. If your blood is acid, you still have cancer. I don't care if everybody says you beat it. Cancer is the ultimate chronic infection. This is the biggest infection power tool in history. Infections cannot live, cannot stay in the body if you're disinfecting every capillary of your blood. How does cancer go to another part of your body? In your blood. Where does cancer get all its food? Your blood. Well, if we had knew cancer didn't like something, all we had to do is get it in the blood. Well, how do you do that? Stand. Step right up. You know, over the course of history, there have been times and moments where major breakthroughs occurred, and it's usually some kind of combination of technologies. They're on their own, we're dynamic and good, but put them together, whoa, man, major breakthrough. Photon genius, that's exactly what it is. There's 72 energy transmitter emitters in this thing, and they're all on you head to toe. You can change your body. It's not about fighting cancer. It's not about beating and curing the disease. It's about conditioning you so you can't get it or can't keep it. You can beat and you can control any bad condition. They say, well, there's no cure for it. You know, you're just helpless. You just have to get in line with the rest of them. The cliff's down there. We'll stall the march to the cliff so you have a little more time, but you're going off the cliff. Because you got the diagnosis. You got the diagnosis, now what? Now what? You do something about it. You can't do more about a diagnosis than this. You can beat any diagnosis, any disease under only one condition. Your condition. If you don't like the diagnosis you've got and you don't like the terminal time they put on you, you don't like the limits that you're living with, change the condition, lest you wind up where you're headed. Thank you for your time.
Okay, is everybody waiting? Sorry about that.